everybody. Good to see you. Good to be seen by you. You know we have to start when Dennis texts me. When Dennis McLeod texts you, you get up and go. Dennis is truly the boss. He is the man behind the curtain that makes it all running. So Dennis, I submit to you. Hey everybody, my name is Greg. For those that do not know, if you are here and maybe this is your first experience or maybe you haven't been here for a long time, welcome. Thank you for braving those waters again, these waters here. We're a people that are practicing the way of love through the art of living alongside for the sake of neighbor, creation, and self. Troy and me were having a conversation about that last part, for the sake of neighbor, creation, and self, which in 2024, that was our whole year-long focus and intention to do a deep dive. So anyway, good to be with you. Everybody that's online, welcome. For those that are watching right now live, great to have you. For those that maybe are watching a little bit later, thanks for chiming in. But so the normal rhythm of our gathering kind of flows like this. We do start in this moment of song because we believe in the power of music and melody and lyric and what it does to us humans, opens us up, grounds us, maybe awakens us to something. And so we're going to go there. And then coming out of that, we'll move into this moment of Eucharist where we pause to receive and be reminded of the goodness of God, love poured out. And then we hold space for prayer and for those that are in our life that might need that moment of being held in that divine communication with God. And then we'll move into some moments of reflection and engagement together and then kind of talk about our life and then enter into a new week. So we're grateful you're here. Kind of let's let this place be kind of a moment of suspended space where we just kind of take a moment to try to kind of let go of maybe what the morning was like and kind of enter into this place as fresh and as receptive as possible. So grateful that God is present as we gather, so we lean into that, knowing that we are the beloved and God desires always to be with God's beloved. So anyway, good to be with y'all. I'm glad you like being with me as well. So for those who are physically able, you might want to stand, and for those that might not so much, you can stay seated. But Dennis and the team are going to lead us on. So
let's worship together.
I found the treasure, I found the prize, well overwhelming, the unending light. A God who's so gracious, a God who's so kind, a Savior with healing and freedom, and I found life. I found life. God gives grace upon grace like the rivers flowing, mercy so new. With every morning, God made a way when there was no way I could. That's just who God is. God's just that good. God's just that good. I have assurance and I have a hope. I've got a future and God holds it all. And I've got a story, a reason to sing, and all thanks to Jesus, and I am redeemed. God gives grace upon grace like the rivers flowing, mercy so new. With every morning, God made a way when there was no way I could. That's just who God is. God's just that good. God's just that good. And I can't hide it, I believe. I know my Father's love for me. I won't be quiet, I will sing of all my God has has done for me, and I can't hide it. I believe I know my Father's love for me. I won't be quiet, I will sing of all my God has done for me. I'll praise God for all He's done for me. Oh, we praise you, Lord. God gives grace upon grace like rivers flowing, mercy so new with every morning. God made a way when there was no way I could. That's just who God is. God's just that good. God's just that good. Oh yes. God gives grace upon grace like rivers flowing, mercy so new with every morning. God made a way when there was no way I could. That's just who God is. God's just that good. Oh yes, He is. God's just that good. And God's just that good. God's just that good. And oh God, you never leave my side. In your love stands firm through all my life. Oh God, sing it out. And oh God, you never leave my side. Your love stands firm through all my life. Thank you, Lord. You are good, you are good, and all is well with my soul. You are good, you are good, and all is well with my soul. You are good, you are good, and all is well with my soul. Your goodness always goes before me, covers and surrounds me. I am yours. You promise you will never leave me, never to forsake me. I am yours. You are good, you are good, and all is well with my soul. You are good, you are good, and all is well with my soul. You are good, you are good, all is well with my soul. Your goodness always goes before me, covers and surrounds me, and I am yours. You promise you will never leave me, never to forsake me, and I am yours. Your goodness always goes before me, covers and surrounds me, and I am yours. You promise you will never leave me, never to forsake me, and I am yours. When I walk the road of suffering, presence of my enemies. You prepare a table for me. When I walk the road of suffering, and I know you are with me. In the presence of my enemies, you prepare a table for me, for me. Yes, Lord. Your goodness always goes before me, covers and surrounds me. I am yours. You promise you will never leave me, never to forsake me. I am yours. Your goodness always goes before me, covers and surrounds me. I am yours. You promise you will never leave me, never to forsake me. I am yours. You promise you will never leave me, never to forsake me. I am yours.
On your table and chairs, there's a little sacrament in plastic. And I'm going to ask you to hold it in your hand here. Every week we come together and we enter into this moment of Eucharist because it reminds us of what love can do, how it can bind us together in our differences and our diversities and the beauty of all of that. This is that sacrament that holds us, reminds us of how love was poured out towards us. It reminds us of who we are to be, that in our own brokenness, what would it look like for us to make sure that we are offering ourselves to others, that we are allowing the moments where love is true in us to somehow find others. And so this is our sacrament to remember that God that loved us so well. And so every week we hold and take this moment. And we have a Eucharist confession that we do collectively, just kind of, once again, diversity of voices, and yet the singular chorus, if you will, of our voices, and as we get ready to take, to receive. So if you read together, through this sacrament of bread and cup, we remember Jesus. Through this bread and cup, we confidently confess we are the beloved of God. Without shame or fear, we acknowledge and confess our shortcomings and sin. Forgive us, God, and help us to forgive one another. In the light of your mercy, we say thank you. And as one diversified body in Christ, we receive. Amen. And this is where we also hold space, and this is the candle of solidarity, where there's a slide that pops up that kind of outlines some areas where just prompts that we might want to consider. Just holding space for people in our families, in our friendships, in our neighborhoods, situations, circumstances, decisions that are currently facing. To just take these next 4 minutes to kind of hold those before the one who sees you. And then just our Alongsiders community. This has been a season, this has been a summer of transition and change for us. A Dignity Conference that's coming up, just be mindful of that. And then just our own city, it's kind of this drug epidemic and those significantly affected in the care and medical agencies standing in the gap. I was sitting with a really kind person this week, and they're part of Lemonade Project, or Project Lemonade, which really focuses on foster care and young and youth and even young adults in the county and the state. And she lost her brother recently to fentanyl, and in June, and they had, her brother and partner had a child together, and then the mom died from fentanyl, and now she's fostering their child. So I just feel like we need to just hold some space for those that have been affected, those are in the middle of just the struggle that addiction brings to people's lives, and just all of the medical and the care agencies in the city. So, and if you're here and if you want some personal prayer, I'm going to just kind of linger over here. If you want to come, and love to just pray with you, whatever that might look like or mean for you. So let's just go ahead and enter this moment of receiving Eucharist and holding space.
many questions. Will anybody stay? It's been a hard year, so many nights and tears, all of the darkness trying to fight my fears. Alone, so long, alone. I don't know who I'd be if I didn't know you. I'd probably fall off the edge. I don't know where I'd go if you ever let go. So keep me held in your hands. I started breathing, the weight is lifted here. With you it's easy, my head is finally clear. There's nothing missing when you are by my side. I took the long road, but now I realize I'm home with you. Yes, I'm home. I don't know who I'd be if I didn't know you. I'd probably fall off the edge. I don't know where I'd go if you ever let go. So keep me held in your hands. I don't know who I'd be if I didn't know you. I'd probably fall off the edge. I don't know where I'd go if you ever let go. So keep me held in your hands. You're my safe place, my hideaway. You're my anchor, my saving grace. You're my constant, my steadiness. You're my shelter, my oxygen. I don't know who I'd be if I didn't know you. Thank God I do. I don't know who I'd be if I didn't know you. I'd probably fall off the edge. I don't know where I'd go if you ever let go. So keep me held in your hands. Amen. Well, let's just take this moment to just pass the peace around. Pass the peace around this room. You guys stand and just say hello to someone, or just take a moment to just say hello to people around.
Understanding of, Greg mentioned we're in a season of transition as we're closing out the summer. And if you're a regular part of this community, of course, you know the last Sunday, with really good tears, but with a lot of tears, we said goodbye to both Gabby, our children's ministry coordinator for our kids' environments, and Janae, our neighboring lead. And that was hard. And I just want to bring that up to understand that we are still lamenting in this space. We're still grieving good grief, celebration, blessings to them, but also we're sitting with that, and that can be hard for our community. And if you're joining with us, maybe you also have some transitions and some spaces in your life that you can be compassionate to that, and that we can be compassionate to you in that. And of course, then this is sandwiched between another departure that we're looking toward of Brandon and Katie and celebrating them. And so we're in this in-between space where we're saying, this is a lot of change, God. What do we do with all of this? And I'll just bring up one more. No, I can hear people going, John, stop talking about all the changes, right? We know. But there's lots of other things in each of our life. My family is moving to a new house in the neighborhood, and it's amazing, but it's coming in 25 days. And my wife said, I've moved from denial to panic. Once I get through panic, we can start packing. These things are stressful. You can feel them in your body. School is starting soon for those who have kids. Summer is winding down. And that can feel like just a squeeze to pack it all in, and we feel in between. And I think actually we constantly feel in some way, as just human beings, constantly in a state of in-betweenness. And so I just want to invite us for just a second to just calm, just rest in our bodies for a second. And let's do it this way. If you feel comfortable putting your hand over your chest, finding your heartbeat, or if it's more comfortable to put it on your wrist, just find that heartbeat for a second. Find it. How fast is it beating? What's going on when you just sit with your heart for a minute? We as Christians believe that God is deeper than our innermost being, that he's present with us in everything we're doing, in every part of our body. And so just as you listen to that, ba-bum, ba-bum, let that be a reminder to you that you are not just in a body, but you are a body. And God created you that way, and he blessed you that way. This body is not a hindrance. The nerves or the anxiety that I'm feeling right now are not actually a hindrance. The transitional spaces and the feelings we have are not necessarily a hindrance. You are your body. So let's just sit for one moment and let God have that restlessness of whatever we're in between. What we learn from Jesus is over and over, he finds a way to, in a life constantly interrupted, press pause. Jesus takes off in the early morning and gets away. He gets away from the crowds. He takes time to pray. After he understands that he has to begin his ministry, he takes 40 days in the wilderness. We learn, we live, and we are in and participating with a man who understood what it meant to press pause. And so today I want to talk about the practice of pausing, because we at Alongsiders are naming the month of August Pause. Now we do this for our volunteer teams. That's why the kids are downstairs with us today. The kids' environments are closed so those volunteers can have a break. We have the food pantry, the UMES food pantry is closed for the month of August so those volunteers can have a break. And it's a time when we're letting those folks who have put a lot in throughout the year know that we're not a burnout culture, that we want to press pause. But also just for the rest of us, it's a good time to bring up what is it to pause? What does it mean for the rest of our community to pause? And when you press pause on something, if you have an interruption, right? Something's ready, your dinner's ready, and you pause the movie. There's never a good time to pause a movie. You're always in this weird facial expression, or right in the middle of an explosion, you hit pause, right? And you go and you grab your dinner and you sit down And you might be in some new space and you're chatting and then you sit down and you press unpause and then it's just like immediate, right? Boom, like right back into it. Those moments of transition always kind of don't feel complete. They rip us out. We feel in between. And so even when we take concrete and intentional pauses like Jesus did when he went away, we're going to feel that. So when we hit pause as a community in August, we're going to feel this incompleteness continuing in our bodies with the not doing. Whatever you're in between in your life, as you come, maybe as you came this morning, things were chaotic at home and you hit pause, get in the car, get in my body, get to the gathering. Think, God, John, you got me in my body for a second. Like I was starting to get anxious about all the things I left at home. Like it's hard for us to pause. And so we go to places to pause. In Celtic spirituality, there's a term for places which beckon us to pause called thin places. The idea of a thin place is that it was a place where the barrier between heaven and earth is more transparent, where one bleeds into the other, where when you arrive, you feel the overlap in all 5 senses. I find a good tell for a thin place in your life are the places where you realize you suddenly need to take a picture, to bottle it up, to take it back home, to describe it to somebody. You've sensed something that you want to communicate, and you're trying to figure out how, and of course, the picture never communicates the feeling, the full feeling of that thin place. This was a picture I took outside my car window just 2 nights ago. I mean, look at that. That's Mount Hood. And I was just like, this is a thin moment for me. Look at that beauty. Look at the mountain going up into the clouds, the sunset. Just everything spoke to me. Perhaps for you, you have created space for thin places. Perhaps you know of a place right now as I'm talking where you go to get away. Perhaps it's taking a walk in the sunset hour, the golden hour. Perhaps there's a way in which you also say, yeah, I get what you mean by a thin place. And we sometimes schedule or we make a rhythm or a routine out of these pauses to find these thin places. Though, let's be honest, we usually call them vacations, and sometimes we hardly give ourselves any time to pause in them at all. And in certain seasons of our life, let's be honest, we'll take whatever moments we can get. The early years of raising kids, it's like, John, sorry, I'll catalog the pause practice for later. That's not happening in my home right now. The time comes and we're running around the house, we're doing last-minute potty breaks, we're filling water bottles, we're getting in the car. All of these things happen around the pause, and then this. This is a place called Trails End. This is a thin place for me. We went here just a couple weekends ago, and I remember telling Megan after hiking up in this little area in the middle of rapids and going down it on a little floaty with my son Ezra, saying, this is a place where I meet God. And as I said it, I wasn't even totally sure what I meant. Have you ever done that? You're just like, I just have to tell somebody, this is where I meet God. And I just got to mark it like an X on a treasure map so I can come back and excavate that later. I don't know exactly, but this is a thin place. I felt God's gushing, crashing love breaking through the rapids, reaching up through the trees to touch heaven. Wherever your thin places are, to me, they are physical reminders for us of what I think is a universal human need. We are haunted by disconnection, but we yearn for intimacy. We sense this in our culture. Like in the story of a naive English poet named Christian who finds himself in the romantic city of Paris at the turn of the 20th century, forgetting he has any need for the likes of such silly things as food or money as a starving artist, and finds himself falling deeply in love with a dying bordello dancer of the Moulin Rouge. Anybody love that movie? Can I get a few hands? When he proclaims from the rooftops in a way only Ewan McGregor can do, the greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. And only he can do it with that much cheese and pull it off. It is such a good moment. It's the opinion of some biblical commentators that it is the big story of the Bible as well, actually, what our culture has tapped into there. Our birthplace as a people was bathed in the warm embrace of God's companionship. But something went deeply wrong. Something that began with humanity at the beginning, a willful rebellion, an inherited disease that has poisoned us in a spiritual way. And now there's a coldness, a suspicion, not just between us and God, but between us, one another. And so the journey from Genesis to Revelation follows God's relentless pursuit to be with us, to bring us to the garden. Every pivotal plot point, every dramatic turn revolves around entering into or exiting from God's rest and friendship. The experience of his love, the holy pause. Practicing pause is not about escaping to find love when we're burned out or lost, but to retreat, to remember God has been with us all along. Saying, in the words of my good friend Brent, you're going to be okay, but this time, let's do it together. How's that for after a failure you've had in your life? Could you cultivate a voice of God that is more true to his character, that instead of saying, how dare you, how terrible, what a mistake, to hear his soft voice saying, you're going to be okay, it's going to be okay, but this time, let's do it together. Because that's the story of the Bible, of God's relentless chase for us. In our adopted Hebrew creation story, the story that has given all Jews, Christians, and indeed much of Western civilization our sense of purpose, it is of the divine Trinity going forth to form creation, and out of creation, humanity, multiplying the relational love in the Trinity, but also appointing us as the physical, the visible manifestation of God's order, as co-rulers over the earth, as collaborators. God does this in the original thin place in the Garden of Eden, what the Bible actually calls the holy mountain, where heaven and earth join, in a walled garden next to the dwelling castle-like presence of God. The language is rich. And of course, we know this well. In Genesis 2, it says, he took the man and set him down in the Garden of Eden to work the ground and keep it in order. So, we have a practice of presence, but we also have in that presence a sense, a deep sense, that goes all the way back to our early origins of purpose. In the first human, we see we are made to be in between people in every way. People who are made for the holy pause, who get purpose out of being in the thin place, and who find their home at the intersection of heaven and earth. We practice pausing to join and be joined. Now, fast forward through the biblical story and our larger human story. It's not all joining, of course. There's lots of separation. There's abuse, there's corruption, there's thievery, there's war. The Bible is a rated R book, if not worse. And in so many ways, we have lost the plot, we realize. And it's Jesus, through his death and resurrection, that repairs once and for all the human separation from God and reminds us of our true purpose in a way that we can see it, in a way that we can relate to it. That we, as Jesus, are to become joining places. We practice pausing to join and be joined. Paul writes in Corinthians, you realize, don't you, that God himself is present in you. No one will get by with vandalizing God's temple. You can be sure of that. God's temple is sacred. And you, remember, are that temple. Temple buildings in Jesus' time were the chief place where humanity was made right to God. On the Day of Atonement, when the priests entered the most holy place to make sacrifices and to make things right before Israel and God, the tradition was that they would tie bells and a rope to the priest's feet so they'd know to pull them out if they stopped hearing anything. because the fear of the priests was that the rightness of God could be so incongruent with humanity that it would strike a priest dead on the spot. Now just imagine as you're getting that tied around your leg. That's like, ooh, we're doing this? This is what we're expecting maybe? Think is that bad between humanity and God right now? Paul is writing in Corinthians that just as the wrongness of the world was admitted and ultimately corrected through the temple, so the temple building stood as a witness, a reminder, and an actual encouragement that in and through this structure of the temple building, rightness was being made among the wrongness. Because of Jesus' death for us and God's honoring of that death through resurrection, followers of Jesus become this building. Paul says, you are temples. So we are these joining places where rightness is being made among the wrongness. It's happening inside of us. It's happening in what we do with each other. We are joining places just in our everyday lives when we least deserve it, and sometimes when we just have to believe in a miracle. When we pause, the place we are making, the practice we are making is to create space to devote our bodies as temples. We are pausing to remember and choose how to be mobile, thin places for one another through Christ-like acts of love, compassion, justice, and mercy. Have you ever had a friend where you say, when I go see that friend, I feel like I'm in the presence of God? As having bodies that are temples, we become these mobile, thin places. So to practice pausing is this retreat to the original story. And we find answers to questions to who are we? And in the author Wendell Berry's words, what are people for? But the practice of pausing also includes unpausing. You will leave the gathering today and you will go back out of this special space maybe where you felt an energy or a purpose or a sense of being, and you will get rushed back into your everyday life. If I had the sophistication today, I would have put a video behind me constantly pausing and unpausing to give a sense of how that feels. Cars coming on a freeway, constantly stopping at a light and then merging as they on-ramp into the highway and racing away. This is what our lives feel like. But when we learn about the thin places, these temples, the story of the Bible, some of you are saying, great, John, that sounds like a lot of theory. You're giving me the aerial view of the highway. This is like the classroom version. But we all know that when we start to merge onto traffic for the first time we ever drove, this is what it feels like. A friend of mine is a driver's ed teacher. His name's Timo. And he told me that the only drive that still makes him scared for his life is the drive where he's sitting shotgun with his little brake pedals, and that 16-year-old's at the wheel pulling onto the highway for the first time. Maybe some of you have helped teach your own children and remember sitting next to them, white-knuckling the side by the window as they were driving down the freeway for the first time. This is practice. And this summer, what we're learning as a church is practice. The aerial theory, great, John, give me all that. I'll forget most of it when I go home. I need the stuff that I do to merge onto the highway today. And when you're down there, you'll get it, John. It's not like all that other stuff. It's very real and it's very confusing. Paula Darcy writes, God comes disguised to us as our life. This is practice. Moses understood practicing. Out of pauses, living in a person who must join Israel, God's chosen people, as God pulls them out of Egypt and across the Red Sea. Moses is the leader, ripped between Israel and God as he is the ultimate joining place, right? Pointing forward to what Jesus will do later. Moses is the figure that Jesus actually relates and reveres and looks up to because he saw this is a man who as a leader was like stretched to the point of ripping in half as a joining place for a people that literally got impatient with the waitings and the transitions as Moses is up on the mountaintop. And they say, you know what would be better? The calf can give us what we want. You know what's better than pausing and remembering our original story? It's escaping to what I can get right now. And so they make a prompt and dramatic exit from God's rest and relationship. Moses, meanwhile, is up on the mountain. He sees this and is like, I'm done with Israel, Moses. This is what they're doing. I've had it. Moses, hey, I got an idea. You're the new Noah. I'm wiping them all out. You'll come with me. It's you and me, man. Let's go do this together. But Moses surprises us. He can't imagine a world without God, but he also can't imagine a world without Israel. God's people. And so basically, Moses grabs onto God and won't let go, and grabs onto Israel and won't let go, and says, it's either all of us or none of us. I'm not letting go of either of you. And God sees Moses' genuine love and willingness to step in and help make things right and assures him, for these kind of people, that my presence will go with you, and I will, let's say it together, give you rest. Some of us have been contending a lot in our practice. We've been in between people a lot. We're exhausted. It's helpful to know that God sees this. And he tells us, I am with you. I'm a God that relentlessly chases after you and with you, and I will give you rest. In this community, true to our purpose, we are, each of us, called to and are in various ways acting as joining places for the good of the city, for the good of our staff and our leaders, for the good of those we serve, for the good of our neighborhood and community, even when it tears us in two. But something can happen to us when we give up practicing pauses well. Greg and I were talking, and he told me about this term that the monks and nuns used called the noontime demons. And it happened, in monasteries, they get up early because you start chores when it's in the cool of the day. And you work every day taking care of your whole community. And you get to that lunchtime hour. I was just out in Eastern Oregon, and at lunchtime hour, the sound of the cicadas is like that weird humming that's like you're going to come across some like carcass of a beast or something. It's like a very unnerving midday haunting that's like zzz, and you're just like, you get this feeling in your body that's just like, I'm hot, I'm tired, I'm sweaty, I'm discouraged. That guy's not doing the work I'm doing. So let's go talk about how he needs to get his act together, or she needs to get their act together. And let's make our 1 hour lunch a 2 hour lunch. And you know what? I don't even feel like going back to work anymore. And the Catholics called this acedia. It's the word they use for sloth. And it's a word we don't use very often, but it meant spiritual or mental apathy. The spirit of the practice of Israel's golden calf pause button vacation is radically different. It's an acedia. It's radically different than the holy pause, the retreats that empower Moses to stand in the gap. And of course, that comes down to attitude. I'm not saying anything about we can't take vacations. I'm just saying we all know when we get to a place where the discouragement is what's fueling us. And the Christian tradition has a warning against that. And there is an answer to a lot of these times, because when we are in this rest pause, we often view it as a time that is an alone time. That retreat is a time where I go alone and I find God and I come back. We had a practice at my previous church where after Sunday, we would invite people to our backyard to a time we just called rest. We knew that Sabbath rest is not a thing everybody does or has learned or has created time for. We said, just come join our Sabbath rest pause button moment. We'll have lunch, you can hang out in the backyard, you can sleep in the hammock, you can read, you can just drop your kids off. You can do whatever you want back here. This is rest time for whatever that means for you. And we did this pre-COVID for probably a year, and it was a great season. And we sat with some of our friends reflecting on what was it about that Sabbath time, that rest time, that you really appreciated. Do you remember like one moment of that rest that you really, really liked? And they said, yeah, there was this one day where we were all hanging out, and then the picnic table in your backyard, that little kid's picnic table was creaking, and the kids couldn't sit on it. It was coming apart. And so somebody says, hey, let's just run over to Home Depot. Let's get screws. I've got a saw. Let's get this thing fixed up. And so a number of people just broke up from what they were doing. We all went together. We went to Home Depot. We got all the stuff. We came back. We totally enjoyed fixing the thing up. And they said that was the most restful Sunday afternoon I ever remember. And we were working, but we were doing it together in a way that was fun, in a way that made what the common adage of churches is. This is like a cynical common adage you will hear. They'll say, yeah, churches are a place where 20% of the people do 80% of the work. Have any of you ever heard this? It's very cynical. And it's something that should be disproven by every church. Because when we come and we see this picnic table moment, we realize there is a way to do what needs to get done that can be a group pause, a practice of holiness together. So just to close, before we engage, I just want to tickle and remind you that we have this pause and pray every day at noon. If you haven't set a timer on your phone, I'd encourage you to do that. And I want you to go forward from today with just a little different sense about what to do in that pause. Carry this teaching maybe forward, this reflection a little bit, and say, okay, when I set that and that goes off, and gosh, I know it's so often you're interrupted, right? And it's you have every intention to do it, but you're in the middle of a conversation and then you don't, right? And I'm not saying it's a perfect solution, but if that's a reminder even to tickle you and remind you and say, oh yeah, I remember what a pause is about. It's about retreating back to that original story and asking not only who am I and what are people for, but where is God in my life? And how do I move forward from that? So, for those of you who have been here before, you're familiar with our engagement time. If you're new, we have a time here for the next 8 minutes where we'd like you to engage however you're comfortable, around your table, maybe alone. There are engagement cards in front of you and pens. Just take a little time to engage with any of these 3 questions or whatever strikes you from the reflection. Practicing pause is not about escaping to find love when we're burned out or lost, but to retreat to remember that God has been with us all along. Saying in the words of my friend Brent, you're going to be okay, but this time let's do it together. How does this change your view of taking breaks? Pauses can be over a week, a day, a few hours, or a couple of minutes. Jesus gives us a simple pause prayer, which we call the Lord's Prayer. In it, he says, Our Father, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Where would a pause be beneficial for you? And lastly, does the story of the picnic table stir anything in you? Perhaps a memory of your own. Can you respond to what is stirring? Consider how you or you and a friend could be part of picnic table moments here at this community. Thank you guys for engaging.
All right. Well, as you guys know, every week we just encourage you. Remember, engagement doesn't stop here. Engagement continues throughout the week. So take whatever prompts have been helpful, whatever maybe you've been thinking about, and really kind of enter that into the week. And just as these moments where you feel, man, rushed or stretched thin, how would you find rest? What does rest look like for you? How do you pause? As John had mentioned, our whole community is in this month-long annual moment of rest to just really kind of an extended Sabbath, if you will, of allowing and giving space for people to find their pace as they begin to re-enter or on-ramp for the fall. So these moments of pause are really important to us. Speaking of pause, we wanted to remind you that next Saturday, we're going to be on the water at Cottonwood Beach. So if you've got paddleboard, kayak, floaties, you just want to come out and hang out under the sun and have a creation bath, as I would call it. We're going to be over there from about 10 o'clock on in the morning. And I would love for you to join us if you are able. It'd be great if we could kind of know how many people are going to come. And so you can actually sign up on that QR code website or even the kiosks in the back of, or in the foyer out there. So that's this coming Saturday. So if you want to be there, that'd be great to have you. And as a reminder, the Portland Bridge Pedal, thousands of people are jumping on their bikes next Sunday. And I love this. I always love seeing this every year. But obviously, we're going to still gather. It might be hard for some of you to get over here because of freeways, so you might want to just double check that. Also, our annual campfire, we go off to Timothy Lake, and now all of that is sold out. So, but you can have day passes are available, meaning just drive up to Timothy Lake, hang out with the rest of some of the Alongsiders crew that have been camping up there, and get on the lake once another opportunity for a creation bath. That's August 21st through the 23rd. Also, as a reminder, once again, we are hosting the Dignity Conference, a human care leadership conference, right here, September 29th and 30th. I encourage you to sign up, $49 registration until September 1st, and then it goes up. These are just some of the communicators and guides that are going to be with us. Some of these are really dear friends of mine, Shane, and others are going to be here. So these are going to be a really important conversation about just the need for what it means to dignify one another well, and they're going to be here helping with that. And then a little stupid little plug. Hey, buy a really cold water bottle. All right, that's about it. Everybody stand, and we're going to be leaving together. And thanks for being with us. For those once again are new to us, it's great to have you again. And thanks, John, for leading in the reflection. But always just praying just for your lives each and every week. May you go in the grace that is offered every day. May you go in the mercy and the goodness of God. All right, peace be with you. Love each other as you leave today, and we'll see you hopefully during the week or over the weekend.